are the Commanders actually a quarterback away from being real contender in the NFC?
I think they could be, depending on what quarterback it is that we're talking about. Like, if you look at the team from last year, they were close in a lot of games. Mm-hmm. They actually beat Philadelphia.
Yeah, they're competitive.
Okay, they beat a team that was in the Super Bowl. Very competitive. They got, like you said, they got a lot of good skill position players. They get Chase Young back healthy on the defensive side of the ball where he can play every single down now. I think that they got something. I mean, I honestly do. I think that just one of Ron Rivera's biggest problems since he's been in Washington is the quarterback. If you don't have that guy, you're in trouble.
You know,
if you don't have a quarterback, you're in trouble.
More than even the quarterback, because there are some exceptions, but more than even the quarterback, and this is why I always thought it was more Belichick than Brady, and then I started changing my tune later.
Here we go.
In the NFL, it seems to me it's the coaches, because the coaching staff and the head coach especially, because when you look at the NFC East, it was the worst division in football for years. And just like that, you look around, you go, oh, wait, this might be not the best quarterback division in football, right? But it might be overall the toughest division in football, even without great quarterbacks. They have good quarterbacks, other than Jalen Hurts,
but all
because
three
the coaching staffs.
No, but all three of those teams that made the playoffs, they got a young quarterback that's learning how to play in Daniel Jones with a new staff, playoffs. They got another quarterback that is in his second year as a full-time starter, Super Bowl. They got another quarterback at Dak Prescott, won the first playoff game, went and lost to San Francisco, but at least they made it to the second round. They all got quarterbacks.
No, but listen to what I'm saying, though. Yes, they do, of course, right. But what I'm saying is,
if Washington had a quarterback last year, we might be looking at 4 teams.
But it's the Parcells thing. You just need a quarterback. You don't need the greatest quarterback.
Oh, no,
so you look at the quarterback.
They haven't had a quarterback.
The quarterback division was the AFC West, right? If you look at the level of quarterback, Mahomes, Herbert, Derek Carr, Russell Wilson.
They had names.
But they weren't a good division because there were questions about a lot of coaching staffs. But when you look at the NFC East, Giants got a coaching staff now. Eagles got a coaching staff, right?
Cowboys,
you can see,
all right.
Cowboys, okay.
Right.
But it's a guy who's won a Super Bowl.
Dan Quinn's really good.
Right. They got successful Super Bowl appearing head coaches as coordinators. And now you look at Washington. Now Bieniemy's the offensive coordinator. You have a guy who's competitive every year in Ron Rivera. And they might be the most competitive division in football.
You got to get a quarterback, though.
But, yeah, you have to get a quarterback. It's got to be a guy who can play. It doesn't need to be
you don't need to
Patrick Mahomes.
You don't need to get Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers, but you got to get a guy who can play.
So give me a guy who can play.
I think a Tannehill could help them. I think a Ryan Tannehill could help them.
Boy, I hope they do get Ryan Tannehill. I'm a Giants fan.
No, I said he could help them. I didn't say he was going to win the division.
Could they be in the Lamar Jackson sweepstakes?
Yeah, they could. Here's the deal. If he's right about Daniel Snyder in the next, weeks or months or whatever, the team gone, Daniel Snyder has been a splash guy. He likes star power. So if he was still in place as the owner, I could see them certainly 100% going after Lamar Jackson. I don't know if Ron Rivera thinks like that. I've talked to him many times over, and like he said, he wants to run the football, he wants to play defense, and he needs a quarterback that does just enough, not a quarterback that can carry a team.
So I do appearances.
Even though Cam Newton took him to the Super Bowl.
I do appearances on the Andy Pollin show in D.C., which is on after us in D.C. on Tuesdays. And Andy was talking about a theory that he was asking me about it, that, Dan Snyder, because he's might be vindictive, might offer Lamar Jackson a crazy guarantee just to stick it to the other owners on his way out the door. Key, if he does that, he'd be doing that town the biggest favor on his way out the door he could, because that guarantee is not going to look crazy in a year from now or 2 years from now. And meantime,
I wonder if he'll still have. Does he have the power to do that? I don't even know if he has the power.
His wife, he can. I'd have to look. But anyway, if any dynamic that leads to Lamar Jackson on Washington is great for Washington.
Yeah, and I think management council may have to sign off. That's a good one. I didn't even think about that. You $500 million, stick it to the rest.
And by the way, really, when you think about it, it doesn't stick it to the owners in the sense that they all have to spend on the team more or less the same. So it's not about. It doesn't drive the market up. It just drives the quarterback market up, which suppresses, say, the running back market, right? Because the money is all the same. There's a limit, but you got to put that in escrow. So now these owners are looking around going, hold up, time out. Now to sign our quarterback, we need to put $250 million in cash we got to come up with?
Yeah, they can borrow from the bank. And I know he had a relationship with Andy Reid and some of the other people that are in Kansas City based on the Philadelphia Eagle days and whatnot. But this is what you get. you get a player who seemed like at that time, him and Bieniemy certainly didn't get along at the level that you would think based on performance, based on the Bieniemy's coaching style, and where you perceive yourself as a player. So when somebody tells you something and you don't want to hear it, you take a negative approach toward it. So here's an opportunity now to fire back at Eric Bieniemy, something you've been holding on to for a long time.
He was loaded, huh?
And now locked and loaded.
Came loaded.
Now you're ready to unleash on him, and I'm extremely disappointed in Shady McCoy. And when I see him, I'm going to let him know, you are better than this. You're better than that.
What if he really believes it, Key?
But he can't believe it because it's not true. In fact, other players, Jamal Charles, Tyreek Hill, one of my good buddies in Tyreek Hill, he had something to say on his Twitter about what, in fact, was going on in the Kansas City's office in the room.
We have it up on ESPNU right now. I have to disagree with you, Shady. Bieniemy coached me 4 years. I learned many things from EB. I still keep in contact with him. A great husband and father. He deserves to be a head coach. That's Jamal Charles. Tyreek Hill. Shady and EB.
Shady mad at
EB told him to tuck that ball because of his running style. He holds it out. Tyrann Mathieu. Man, you blanked up with it.
So there you go. So there's our ex-players on the Kansas City Chiefs coming to the defense of Eric Bieniemy about what Shady McCoy's saying.
I think.
Now, when he says tuck the ball, Shady had a special way of running with the football, which was all the way out here in the universe when he needed to hold it tight to the chest.
That's how you turn it
over.
EB
is a veteran running back that says, man, you got to tuck that thing and hold it tight to the chest. And I'm sure Shady, after however many years, 12 years of carrying it way out here, he's like, this works for me. And EB like, well, it ain't going to work for me. And so you get the heads buddy.
What do you think about what LaShawn McCoy had to say?
Look, that's like I was just talking with you guys before we came on air. That's extremely disappointing that he took that route with it. It sounded personal. It sounded like someone who had, although he was trying to put it as, look, I'm just being honest because I have firsthand experience and I was there and I'm just trying to give it to you straight and be objective. No, it sounded personal. And look, I know everybody in that organization from top to bottom. I know how it ended for Shady in Kansas City. I know what they thought about his skill set and his level once they shipped him down the road and he was only there for that one season. I know that Eric Bieniemy is not – look, Eric Bieniemy is one of those guys who coaches the way we used to be coached in the 90s, early 2000s, which is not the way you can coach players now and or discipline or teach any kid now.
Which is to say what? How?
He's very old school, very much so matter of fact. Sometimes it's going to be maybe some word choices that, I don't know, you don't hear very much so nowadays, but I used to hear all the time.
HR, they hurt your feelings type stuff.
Exactly. And you know what? And there's some people who say, well, there's no need for that in today's. Well, you know what? Maybe there isn't. But at the same time, it's not necessarily wrong either. And sometimes that's, for me, that was one of the things that did resonate with me when I was being coached. Nevertheless, let's just put it this way. It didn't work. It wasn't a very comfortable relationship between those two. And it wasn't a comfortable relationship between Shady and Kansas City when it ended there because they basically told him, you're not that good anymore. You're not the same guy as you were in Buffalo and in Philadelphia when we drafted you. Players don't like that.
Yeah.
They don't like being told that. He is very active in his input during the game as far as situationally what they think are the best plays for those particular situations and has come up with many suggestions that have resulted in them scoring big touchdowns in key situations. As far as his leadership ability and his ability to hold people accountable in a day and age where I think that is something that is quite honestly lacking, he will do that. If you want a guy who you expect to really just kind of reward you for just participating, he's not your guy. If you want a guy who, when you earn it, he's going to give it to you, and then he's going to still hold you accountable, he's your guy. Tell me Washington doesn't need exactly that football team. You know what? As great as Andy is, and Andy is a first ballot Hall of Famer, Andy is an offensive whiz. I've been around him too for a long time. Been around Matt Nagy, been around Doug Peterson, Brett Veach, all those guys who have gone through that place and or are still at that place. And I can tell you this, they to a man, the people who I trust, say that this guy will be a fantastic head coach when given the opportunity. But you better understand this. You're going to get a certain brand and a certain style of coaching that maybe some people don't necessarily like as far as being very brash, upfront, in your face, honest about how he feels you need to conduct your business. If you want someone who's going to sugarcoat everything for you and kind of pat you on the rear end and give you a participation trophy, go somewhere else. This isn't your guy.
And that's the problem, Max, is Lewis was just talking about. When you think about Andy Reid probably calls 70% of the plays, and that's okay. That's nothing. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
That's who he is.
Yep.
I would never, ever give up play calling if that's how I got my job. Mm-hmm. That's how he got the Eagles job. He was a play caller. So you never relinquish that. Sean Payton isn't going to relinquish play calling duties in Denver, even though he hires somebody and gives them the title as offensive coordinator. Just like he said, there's input. Mm-hmm. He suggests, hey, what do you have for me on third down? What do you think of this? That's a working relationship. As it relates to him being a head coach in this day and era in style, the NFL needs that, though. Mm-hmm. Because there's so much phony baloney with these coaches that's there. They smile in your face, stab you in the back, tell you one thing, lie to you, out there scouring the internet looking for other players instead of just being truthful with you. Players will run through a wall for you if they know that you're real. They know Andy Reid is real. That's why they're having so much success in Kansas City. When you look at it, Mike Tomlin, success in Pittsburgh, because they already know. They don't have to worry about Mike T lying to them and playing games. Mm-hmm. And this will be Eric Bieniemy when he gets the opportunity.
You know what that comes down to, Key? I mean, that's a great point. Look, there's many different ways to skin a cat as far as coach, right? I've had the coaches who are much more pat you on the rear end, positive reinforcement, don't yell, don't raise their voice. I've also been coached by Belichick and Saban at the same damn time, which I will tell you what.
A little different.
Had me like laying awake at night.
How do you still have your ears?
Bro, let me tell you, I never slept when I played in Cleveland because I didn't want the next day to come too quickly because I knew that, to be honest with you, I mean, it was just going to be hell on wheels every day with this team. The thumb was on you every day in terms of how he held you accountable and the kind of things they would say.
Yeah.
But you know what? They're two of the greats of all time, respectively, college and pro. That being said, look, it comes down to three things to me for coaching. And leaders overall anyway. Are you credible? Can you be trusted? Are you competent? Are you good at your job?
Yes.
And are you positively impacting people? To me, I don't care if you're black, white, man, woman, yeller, screamer, quiet. If you can do those three things for me, as a leader, I'm going to follow you.
Everything else is just window dressing.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm going to follow. Everything else is just going to be subjective, saying, well, you know what? I don't like when people yell at me.
The conversation has been about Eric Bieniemy and LaShawn McCoy's comments about Bieniemy, saying he hopes he doesn't fail, but he thinks he will. We were talking about racial stereotypes.
See, if he had said, Max, I hope he doesn't fail, but I think he will because the situation in Washington is set up to fail.
No, he was talking about Bieniemy's ability
I understand,
as a coach.
But if he had said that, then I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. Yep. But the fact that you saying that no matter what situation this man is put in, he's going to fail because he doesn't know what he's doing is just dead ass wrong.
Robert Griffin III, ESPN NFL analyst, with us now. Good morning, Robert.
The Griff.
Good morning. Good morning, fellas. How y'all doing?
So we were talking, Robert, about Bieniemy and LaShawn McCoy's comments about him. And I've been talking about the idea that there's a certain fear that if Bieniemy doesn't succeed, he has not helped dispel a negative stereotype, right? And which is unfair to him, unfair to the group that is being stereotyped, et cetera, because he's just a man trying to do a job. But I think that exists. Key has been talking about the fact that, why don't we see more black offensive coordinators who are the guys who are getting the head coaching jobs, right? Unless you're Eric Bieniemy. But offensive coordinators are the pipeline nowadays to head coach by and large. And Key brings up a really interesting point, I think, which is if you exclude black players from the quarterback position, those are the guys who wind up coaching the quarterbacks and eventually becoming offensive coordinators, etc. So we've been having this conversation, and Louis Riddick was talking about it last segment as well. What are your expectations for Eric Bieniemy as the offensive coordinator in Washington?
Well, Max, first of all, I got to say that, for Eric Bieniemy, he's accomplished more in his seasons with Kansas City than all of the head coaches who are first-time hires over the last 3 years that have had an opportunity to go out and be successful. When you talk about LaShawn McCoy's comments, I've heard what you guys were talking about, but him saying that Bieniemy, kind of gets on the star players, dog cusses them out and holds them accountable. I mean, that's what you want from your coach. For him to say that Eric Bieniemy doesn't, do install meetings and he's not the one doing corrections because Andy Reid is the one doing that. I mean, that's what you expect from your offensive coordinator. So now Eric Bieniemy gets an opportunity to run the show, be the guy that's doing that and making the corrections in those meetings and pointing out what guys should and shouldn't be doing. And I don't think we should stand in the way of that because Doug Peterson probably wasn't doing that. Matt Nagy probably wasn't doing that. And to say that Eric Bieniemy didn't deserve the opportunity to be a head coach as he was an offensive coordinator like all those other guys under Andy Reid had an opportunity to go out and be successful and or fail, I just think is, it's a flawed judgment. It's a flawed argument. So now my expectations for Eric Bieniemy in Washington, mine are very high. I'm very happy for the Commanders. I think it's an extremely good get for them to get Bieniemy. He's got experience, not just experience working with Andy Reid, but working with Patrick Mahomes.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.
Eric Bieniemy has been introduced as the new offensive coordinator who's calling the plays. Andy Reid's got that menu in front of him, calling the plays. Bieniemy helps install the offense. It's called the offensive coordinator in Kansas City.
That's what I've heard.
And now the Washington Commanders have hired him. And it's a seemingly, one would think, just on its first blush, a lateral move for a guy that has been overlooked for head coaching jobs multiple years in a row, despite being part of a championship team conference-wise and then a couple of occasions league-wide. Normally those coaches get poached. It's an HC. But it's not a lateral move because he's calling plays, unlike Kansas City. He's also being called the assistant head coach. So...
Okay.
He was asked about that title and what it meant, which is just another way of saying, hey, you're not an HC in the NFL, and this is what he had to say.
Well, I think it's very important for a number of reasons, and the beauty of it is me and Coach Rivera will work through that. At the end of the day, Eric Bieniemy is a ball coach. At the end of the day, Eric Bieniemy wants to know the people to work with. Eric Bieniemy wants to make sure that these guys understand that, we're going to learn to put consistent behavior on tape, all right? But also understanding that when we're playing for each other and doing things for the greater good of the organization, also seeing the big picture, that this game ain't that hard. It can be a whole lot of fun, but it's going to be fun when you're making the necessary sacrifices to make each other better.
Okay. Did not know. Here's a few things I knew about Eric Bieniemy. Total hard ass. You speak to anybody, they will tell you that. This guy is a hard ass, and there are no sacred cows. I remember, actually, NFL Game Day morning, we did a piece on the Vikings offense. There was a feature on the Vikings offense back when Adrian Peterson was what one would call the best player in football. Most valuable player, and Bieniemy was the running backs coach, riding him like he was a first-year player. And I remember Marshall Faulk sitting in the commercial break, and he went like this with Bieniemy. He goes, "That's a hard-ass coach." One thing I did not know about Eric Bieniemy: he's a third-person guy. I did not know that. I didn't see that coming. He's a third-person guy. All right. He was point-blank asked about a head coach and why aren't you a head coach? This is what he had to say.
Right now, I'm the offensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders. Okay, being a head coach, that's something. If that's to happen, it'll take care of itself. We've had a great deal of success. We've won 5 straight AFC Championship games, 3 out of 4 Super Bowls. 2 out of those we won. So being a coach, it hasn't happened. It's not anything that's going to impact me moving forward, because the only thing I need to be concerned with, it's what's important today. Today, I got to be the best person that I can be. I got to be the best coach that I can be. And on top of that, I got to get these guys in this building to learn to trust me, to get to know me, but also understanding what the term accountability means. And so I have to be accountable to these men. All right, so all that stuff about being a head coach, we could talk about that next year sometime. Right now, I'm focused on the job at hand.
Okay. By the way, those were, as we say in the radio and television business, hits when you heard the sound drop out. That came from the feed from the team, actually, at any rate. Look, I don't have the answer. I know people say it's because of the color of his skin that he doesn't have a new head coaching job in the NFL. I do not know the answer as to why he's in Washington calling plays when, Doug Peterson and Matt Nagy didn't call plays in Kansas City or under Reed, and they got gigs. He's got a heck of an offense that he can co-coordinate, though, that's for sure. That kid, Brian Robinson, was terrific. McLaurin is a top
Gibson.
McLaurin is a top 10 receiver in the NFL.
Comes down to how he's going to coach up Sam Howell, who looks like it's going to be
Is that the guy, or are the Commanders going in some sort of a way with a free agent? Are they going to just go ahead and see what they have in Sam Howell? Do you think Bieniemy would take the job if he's going to have to coordinate for a second-year player in his first year of being a quarterback, going through the ups and the downs with this kid in the NFC East, where the defending NFC champs reside?
Who's going to go there?
With two other teams starting $40 million a year quarterbacks? And Dak and Daniel Jones?
Are they silently in on Derek Carr? Is it a Jimmy G spot? Tannehill gets released.
The Washington Commanders are a sneaky quarterback carousel team. Don't forget, last year they knocked on Green Bay's door. They knocked on Seattle's door. They knocked on a ton of doors last year before they're like, okay, we'll answer the knock from Indianapolis.
And not to mention, they might have new ownership at the start of next year.
Oh, I don't think so.
No?
That would stun me. I know that they put out the press conference. I mean, the press release that Bank of America was looking into the sale of the team. And, of course, people were all wondering, like, do they have two franchises? Because it says Bofa up on the headline.
And then wearing a suit and a fantastic tie and a nice vest as well. Eric Bieniemy went up there and wowed the Washington media. He's with us live now on Commanders Cam. Already, Coach, changing into dry fit. Does that mean you are already getting right to work?
It's time to go to work, getting ready to set the tone and get it started. So I had to get out my suit so I can be a little bit more comfortable, just relax and start getting everything together.
Well, it's a good-looking suit. And the very first question, Eric, was why Washington? You said, why not? Explain to people what you meant.
Well, here's what I meant. Obviously, there's a ton of talent on this team. And obviously, we all go to the combine. We evaluate the same players. So there's a number of skill set players here that have done an outstanding job since they've been in the league here. All right. So the thing is, and then you look at the defensive side of the ball. There's some players on that other side of the ball, and they've done an outstanding job. So why not come to Washington and work here? On top of that, I say it again, just like I said in my press conference. Coach Ron Rivera is an outstanding leader. He's a man of integrity. And he does an outstanding job of leading men. And so, for me, this is a great opportunity to come and work for a head coach who's obviously on the defensive side of the ball, but also, too, has a nucleus of people that can help put it together and keep building it the right way.
You had a lot of those guys, especially on the offensive side, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, both your running backs, your would-be #1 quarterback in Sam Howell, all there in the room today. I know you can't talk football. yet necessarily with them. But what did it mean to you to see all those guys show up for a press conference on an off day in February?
That was big time. You know, for those guys to take the time just to be here, to be in the building. We know how it is during the off season. Players, they try and get as far away as they can, but that meant a lot to me. And my job is to make sure that when I do have the opportunity to sit down and talk ball with them, is to be as accountable as I can so we can get the very best out of them. And like I told them, you know, when it's all said and done with, it's my job to really sit down and get to know the people, develop the relationships, so now I can get the best out of the players. So I'm fired up about this opportunity. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait.
All right, you said you got to know a lot of these players over the years, certainly in your role as offensive coordinator in Kansas City at the Combine. We're about to go to the Combine. What did you see at all when you looked at last year's quarterback class and you looked at Sam Howell?
Well, you don't really like to disclose all your insight and all your info, but we saw a hell of a player. You know, we saw a guy, and obviously we had a higher draft grade than where he went. But I will say this, you see a competitor, you see a guy who's played baseball who can make those throws, and he can shape the ball and make the throws. Obviously, he's a kid that's competitive, he can run it. And when it's all said and done with, he's a steady kid. He doesn't get too high, he doesn't get too low, although I did like the flex that he did when he scored against Dallas. That was some good stuff. But I love his demeanor and what he brings to the table. Now, I'm still heavy in the evaluation phase, so I just want to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence, just like not just with him, but with all these players, just so I can make sure that we're building this the right way, brick by brick.
All right, Eric, I want to go back to something you said about the transition here when you're on the podium earlier. You said, comfort is the enemy of progress. So you wanted to leave Kansas City, wanted to try something new. What about this job, if anything, makes you uncomfortable so that you can't have progress?
Well, it's growth. It's the opportunity to grow. You can't be afraid of leaving a situation where you've had a great deal of experience and a great deal of success. You can't be afraid of leaving that, okay? And do not get me wrong. You know, we've done a lot of things where we've worked our tails off to put us in that position, but now it's time for me to expand my circles, you know, welcome in a new family and build it and get these guys to buy into what I'm selling, but also to have a taste of that success that they can have if we do it the right way. But when it's all said and done with, you don't want to remain comfortable and stagnant in one place. And not that it was getting stagnant and not that I was getting comfortable. I just wanted an opportunity to go somewhere else and embrace another challenge.
Eric, what do you say? And I know people kind of threw the head coaching thing at you on the podium, and they tried it in a lot of different ways today, and you said all the right things. But what do you say to the people who are not mad at you for taking the job at all, happy that you found something you like, but they are mad for you? People that look at the process and say they are mad that Eric Bieniemy thought, you know what, this is right for me.
Well, here's the thing. I just say this. First and foremost, I greatly appreciate all the support. But also, too, my job is to make sure that I'm where my feet are. And so I can't worry about the things I cannot control. Obviously, I still got to do a better job of putting myself out there. And when I'm sitting in that room, obviously, I got to be accountable to myself and make sure that I can make it happen. But I'm not going to allow those distractions to impact what we have moving forward. So, like I said, I'll eliminate all that stuff. My job is to make sure that I'm concentrating on what's important now. And the only thing that's important to me now, Andrew, is just making sure I'm maximizing today, which is going to help us till tomorrow.
You said the last couple of weeks have been draining, both physically and emotionally. I get the physically part here. I mean, you guys won a Super Bowl. You had a parade. You had to fly back and forth, I assume, between Kansas City and Washington. But what about it has been draining emotionally?
Well, just like I just discussed, it's been 10 years, and just all the family members that I have made outside of the Bieniemy household. I said this earlier, you know, between Clark Hunt, Mark Donovan, Brett Veach and his staff, Coach Reed, our entire offensive coaching staff, all of our support staff. I mean, I have so many people that I can name. I mean, the late night crew that comes in and clean, and just all the friendships and relationships that have developed. That's hard to leave. But in order to grow in this profession, you have to have the ability to count on yourself and bet on yourself. And so I'm betting on Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy has a lot to offer, okay? It was emotionally draining leaving family behind because of all the close relationships that has been developed. But I'm okay expanding my horizons. I'm okay expanding my circles. And I'm okay of expanding my family out here with the Washington Commanders.
And I think everyone watching wishes you nothing but the best as you do take this next step on that journey. Congratulations again, Eric Bieniemy, and good luck there as the new OC and assistant head coach of the Washington Commanders.
Thank you, Andrew. I greatly appreciate it. And please, you guys got to do me a favor. And please tell MJD I said hello. And I think he's getting a little wider than me, okay? Got him.
Okay, can I tell you something real quick? I was going to ask about MJD at the very end of this. Like, hey, do you have a message for him? But you gave such an emotional and heartfelt answer there at the end about a new family and a new challenge. I'm like, like you nailed it. You nailed the landing. I can't ask you something stupid about MJD. And then, bam, you just went there anyway. Well done.
That's my guy. I appreciate you, Andrew.
I texted him earlier. I said, hey, what should I ask your guy? And, well, I can't actually repeat on air what he said, but we can do that later. Eric Bieniemy, good luck to you, man.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. You guys take care. Appreciate you having me.
Eric Bieniemy on Commanders Camp. Coming up next, what's next for the Cowboys before they head to Indy? The latest from Dallas and Jane Slater straight ahead.
Was introduced moments ago as the Commanders' associate head coach and offensive coordinator. Bieniemy leaves the Chiefs after helping lead them to 3 Super Bowl appearances and 2 championships in 10 seasons on Andy Reid's staff. We head to the nation's capital to hear what he had to say.
So, and I'll keep saying this, right now I'm the offensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders. Okay, being a head coach, that's something, if that's to happen, it'll take care of itself. We've had a great deal of success. We've won, 5 straight AFC championship games, 3 out of 4 Super Bowls, 2 out of those we won. So being a head coach right now, it hasn't happened. It's not anything that's going to impact me moving forward.
Saying all the right things. Louis Riddick back here with us, Frank Isola. Stephen, I want to start with you. You can really go wherever you want, but do you think this was the right decision, and how do you think he'll fare there in Washington?
I've had a change of heart. A few days ago, I was of the mindset that it wasn't the right thing to do because I thought that, you got Patrick Mahomes and you're departing Patrick Mahomes for Taylor Heineke, Mr. Muffler himself, or Carson Wentz or Sam Howell or somebody, and I didn't like that. I think that puts you in a precarious position to say the least. My mindset was, stay where you are because that's a winning situation and Patrick Mahomes ain't going anywhere for the foreseeable future. But upon reflection, I'm going to say I've had a change of heart. And the reason that I've had a change of heart is because there's something to be said about there's nowhere to go but down. When you've coached as an offensive coordinator for the last 5 years, when there's no definitive word from the Kansas City Chiefs, which I think is a separate story, as to why they haven't labeled him the head coach in waiting. Other franchises have done that for other personnel. We saw Jerry Jones do it in Dallas for Jason Garrett when Wade Phillips was there, for crying out loud, along with a plethora of other situations. You have a coach in place as a coordinator, and it is clear that that individual is the heir apparent whenever that person steps down, and Andy Reid isn't anticipated to coach for the next decade or so. And so for me, the Kansas City Chiefs and their failure to definitively say that's our next guy once Andy Reid steps away is somewhat alarming to me. Having said all of that, I will say this. Going to Washington, again, now there's nowhere to go but up. You've been putrid. Your offense hasn't been great. Ron Rivera is a defensive mind who happens to be the head coach. You're going to have an opportunity to distance and separate yourself from Andy Reid and establish on your own accord what you're capable of doing to build your resume. It's risky, no doubt about it, but it's worth the risk, because what he's saying is that if staying in Kansas City, no matter what I do, they're going to give the credit to Andy Reid no matter what. Here in the nation's capital, I know that if our offense flourishes, everyone is going to look at me, and I'm going to be the one that gets the credit. And if I recall, Lewis, I think he's also either the associate or the assistant head coach along with the offensive coordinator, which indicates to me that the minute Ron Rivera steps away, he's going to be that dude unless everything falls apart. So based on that reality, I say I had a change of heart. I think it's the right move, and I think it was the smart move for him to make.
Yeah, Stephen, I agree. Look, he said today, I was just listening to it before we came in here and started this segment. He said something to the effect that comfort is the enemy of progress, that is why he made this move. And he was comfortable down there, although he was still a guy who was probably looking to advance his standing within that organization, both from a title perspective and from a compensation perspective, which he got both from Washington. Make no mistake, I don't know what the exact terms of his contract is in Washington, but I can guarantee you it's a significant pay raise. I can guarantee you, obviously, the associate head coach title is a significant raise in terms of its, the attention that's going to be drawn to the level of responsibility that he's going to be given there. And it's deserving. It does worry me. It does concern me as to, obviously the level of competency of the two organizations, between Kansas City and going to Washington, and the kind of headwinds that are going to be blown in his face going to Washington, the kind of things he's going to have to help get right, both offensively and organizationally as the associate head coach, that he didn't have to worry about in Kansas City. But again, as you also alluded to, this is something that is necessary if he is to ultimately gain the trust, the respect, and ultimately the opportunity to become a head coach, which, make no mistake, I don't care what Eric says about the fact that, look, he's focused on the task at hand, which is what he should say and what he should do. His goal is to become a head coach. His goal is to lead from the front, not from behind someone as second in command, but to lead from the front. That is the goal. And right now, for whatever reason it is, people have not afforded him the opportunity to do that yet for various reasons. Some of them are very obvious. Some of them maybe not so obvious, although we can speculate as to why they are. But he felt he needed to break away from the comfortable situation that he is in to go to one where right now, basically everything that happens to them offensively from this point forward in Washington will be on him. Right or wrong, it will be on him. Starting with, how does this quarterback situation pan out in Washington? How does Sam Howell develop here? How does this offense take off from an explosive playmaking standpoint? Because they have got some very, very nice young pieces on the perimeter, in particular at wide receiver with guys like Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. Those guys are spectacular. Bieniemy Brown, spectacular. Brian Robbins, spectacular. Antonio Gibson, they've got some studs. This is a team that can very much so raise up and surprise some people. And Eric will get a lot of credit when he brings his creativity, which Andy gives him a ton of credit for down in Kansas City, as far as implementing some of the out-of-the-box ideas, formations, motions, personnel deployment that they use down there, that a lot of that originates with Eric's creativity. Although whenever Kansas City does something like that, people immediately go, that must be Andy Reid. No, it's not always him. Now he will get the credit for that kind of stuff. But conversely, if it doesn't work, there are people who are just sitting back right now going, if it doesn't work, we're going to say, that's why you're not a head coach. Not because of the surroundings, not because of things maybe he can't control that no coach could not control, but that's the risk. That's the risk he's willing to take. I commend him for it. I probably would do the exact same thing. Yeah. He deserves his opportunity at some point. I believe he will get it. I believe he will be exactly what this football team needs, and ultimately he'll get exactly what he wants.
Lewis, you said you're not sure. There are a lot of reasons why isn't he getting a job. I actually think he addressed one of them today, because when we see Eric Bieniemy, we see him on the sideline. Very rarely hear from him. Look at him today, though. First of all, he looks like $1 million in that suit. He sits down. He's saying all the right things. Mm-hmm. So it's almost as if who's ever advising him, whether that's Andy Reid telling him to do that, his agent, his significant other, he went up there today to sell himself as a future head coach in the league, which was very smart. So was ever telling him to do that, and he followed that, I thought he hit it out of the park. My only thing would be, in terms of it being, you're saying, obviously, a significant bump in pay, the job title, that's all great. No offense to Washington, but it's not like he went to Baltimore. We look at the Ravens, look at their organization, from ownership, front office, coaching staff. There's a lot of teams around the league that are like that. That's what would concern me, especially look at the team that he's leaving, what they have there. Plus, I'm not even talking about the players yet. All right, so we all know they got the greatest quarterback in the league on their team. He's walking into that situation. That's what would worry me if I'm Eric Bieniemy.
That's a great point with the culture and everything that they've dealt with. You're
and
right.
that's why
That's a huge wild card in talking about an uncomfortable situation in terms of progress.
And that's why the idea you said people are going to be waiting for him to fail. They're going to say, see, there you go. The likelihood of him failing, that's not why you should avoid a job. That could be the case.
You're worried it's not a position to succeed.
There's no doubt, but you know what he's doing? He's still saying it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth the risk. Because if I win and I succeed, I'm going to succeed spectacularly.
Yeah.
He knows that it wouldn't matter if he was. Look, he's right now at the greatest organization in professional football, and he's getting zero credit.
Yeah.
None. So what does he have to lose in his mind?
With Sam Howell and this offense, 27th in points per game.
I'm going to take the biggest risk possible because really, maybe it's the only risk I have right now. That's the only option I have. But if he wins,
guys, there's something to be said for. You got 2 Super Bowl titles and 3 Super Bowl appearances and 5 straight AFC Championship appearances in your 5 years as an offensive coordinator. There is something to say about staying someplace too long and having nowhere to go but down.
Yep.
Because they've been so successful that anything short of a berth in an AFC Championship game is going to be deemed a failure.
Yeah.
And best believe, if folks ask why, they're going to look at him before they look at Andy Reid.
No, for sure. And with Washington, you can only go up from here, especially when you're looking at.
Why not Washington?
Bieniemy's former QB, Patrick Mahomes, jumped on Twitter after the news conference and tweeted, "There should be no questions on how great of a man/coach Bieniemy is. His leadership has a direct impact on the player and person I am today. 10 plus years learning under one of the greatest coaches of all time, and I cannot wait for him to continue to prove doubters wrong." So, Mina, reality is, though, Bieniemy goes from Patrick Mahomes to Sam Howell. What do you expect his offense to look like now that he'll be calling the plays?
Yeah, well, if it actually is Sam Howell, they're saying it's going to be Sam Howell, but you know this time of year, teams, you can never really tell truth from fact. He's a bit of an unknown in the NFL, but we have seen him play a great deal, of course, at UNC and then in limited preseason action and in the one game with Washington. And what we do know about him is that he's very mobile. He's a true dual threat quarterback, I think. He's got pretty good straight line speed. He has a quick release, and he has a big arm. You saw that not in his last year at UNC, but really in the prior year when he had better skill players, how he could push the ball downfield. The next year, he was didn't have much talent around him. I think that's a big part of the reason why he fell in the draft. So what does that mean for Eric Bieniemy? Well, I actually think a lot of the concepts that Bieniemy measured in Kansas City translate well to Washington for Howell as a quarterback. You're going to see a lot of RPOs taking advantage of that quick release. You're going to see him boot him out, cut the field in half, try to give him simpler reads, and then you're going to see him on the move, obviously more than I think you saw Patrick Mahomes on the move. That's not saying Sam Howell is going to beat Patrick Mahomes. It's just saying there are principles and concepts that we saw from Bieniemy that I think Sam Howell would have success with.
And I would say, Mina and Laura, what are the real expectations here in a loaded division, right? And I say loaded division, I'm talking about obviously Philadelphia, the Dallas Cowboys, and the New York Giants that surprisingly got to the playoffs and won their game. And so I still have questions about the quarterback position. As you mentioned, you're leaving Patrick Mahomes to go to Sam Howell. Now, they do have a couple pieces in McLaurin and some other pieces on the offensive side of the football that will put you in a better place and a better move, but no offensive coordinator is good or great without a stellar quarterback. And can he develop this young man, if it's him and not somebody else, into becoming something? A new ownership group will be in town at some point in time. Will they be patient enough to let Eric Bieniemy and Ron Rivera continue to develop this quarterback over time? Because I don't think in 1 year they're going to get to where they're trying to get to.
Yeah, I think we all are excited to see Bieniemy in this role and hope he has a ton of success. Lots of quarterbacks to get to here, and we're glad we have our insider Jeremy Fowler for that. Let's go through some of them. We start with Howell.
Yeah.
What is the expectation there?
So the expectation is that he earns the QB1 job in Washington. Washington wants to give him every chance to do that. They loved what he did behind the scenes this last year and then in his one start for the team. Now, Carson Wentz has a $26 million cap hit. So his future there is a bit shaky. Could bring back Taylor Heineke. They love him as the bridge backup, a guy who can start if needed. But Howell's expected to be the guy, and they want to give him some opportunities to move, throw on the run a little bit, play action, see what he can do with the new offensive coordinator.
He's going to shut a lot of people up. If you really look at it and really objectively analyze his performance this year, I think he's going to shut a lot of people up.
Talking with ESPN NFL front office insider Louis Riddick on Greeny. And Lou, when I came into the league in 2005, we had 6 black head coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Right now we have 4. Now, when you look at the predecessors for Eric Bieniemy at the offensive coordinator position in Kansas City, Doug Peterson, Matt Nagy, they didn't have to go to lateral moves to prove themselves. They both got head coaching jobs.
Sure.
Look at Sean McVay's coaching tree.
Sure.
Matt LaFleur, who was an offensive assistant, Zach Taylor, who was an offensive coordinator. They didn't have to go elsewhere to prove themselves as an OC before they got a job. They became head coaches at their next stop, and both of them wildly successful. What does it say about the NFL's efforts to improve the pathway for minority coaches in the National Football League to get opportunities as head coaches? What does it say about the work that they've done, or lack thereof, based on what we're seeing play out with Eric Bieniemy?
I think really, Chris, I think what this comes down to is the fact that, look, owners can do what they want. Owners could literally be using Eric as a Rooney Rule, or in the past, have used him as a Rooney Rule fulfillment piece. And that's it. Simply because they can look at Roger Goodell, they can look at you, they can look at me, they can look at all the fans around the world and say, I can hire who the hell I want.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna comply by your rules, but you know what? I can hire who I want. I don't have to fill any quotas here. They're not demanding that I hire this guy. They're asking me to interview the guy, so I don't have to hire him. And really, that's what it comes down to. It comes down to owners being able to make the choices that they want to make, regardless of whatever efforts Roger Goodell makes, you or I make, anybody else makes in the league office to try and increase minority representation. It doesn't matter until it matters to Jerry Jones, Shad Khan, Art Rooney. Well, you can't throw him in there because he doesn't count. But you know what I'm saying.
I get it.
Jim Irsay, until it really matters to them. And I'm not going to say it doesn't matter to some of them or to a lot of them, but until their choices start reflecting what we obviously see as being a problem, and meaning in terms of them starting to increase that representation, we're going to have this conversation. We just start. See, you know what? This thing about, well, I've heard that Eric Bieniemy doesn't interview well. It's like, what the hell does that mean?
He's interviewed 17 times.
What does that mean he doesn't interview well? What does that mean? Because I can tell you, I know a lot of coaches who are head coaches that either I've been on calls with to get prepared to do games, have talked to casually in just passing, whether it be at the combine or otherwise, that I get the sense that if we sat down and talked about the game beyond the X's and O's, which is really what head coaching is about, it's way beyond the X's and O's, I could say, that guy probably doesn't interview very well, or that guy interviews well, or whatever. You know, right? I could subjectively apply that to anybody, but it just seems to be something that sticks with Eric Bieniemy all the time. It's always this. Well, what are you really trying to say? What are you saying? And you know what? And we know what it is.
Yeah.
And see, that's the thing that's just so frustrating. You know, it's so frustrating.
You know, you hear the thing about the owner is going to hire who they want to hear. Like I had heard one time there was an organization that hired a head coach and in the middle of the interview said, stop talking because our owner wants to hire you. And based on what you're saying, you should not be hired with what's going on. So just stop talking.
Well, you know what? That speaks to a bigger problem. So, I mean, how do I say this? Like, if I had enough money to buy Microsoft, the entire company, does that mean I am qualified simply because I had enough money to buy Microsoft to then start hiring executives who could, and hiring executives and putting them in charge as far as developing the new product line and making sure we're up to standard?
Probably not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So why does that apply in this instance in football, right? because we have 32 guys who are in a position to be able to own an NFL franchise, which makes us think that they are automatically qualified to ascertain who is the best candidate to be hiring. You see what I'm saying? My point being this: if you want to know why there's so much turnover in the NFL as far as head coaches are concerned, and why it's like, well, God, that guy didn't quite turn out. That guy didn't quite turn out. Could that tell you that maybe there's something wrong with the entire process? As far like maybe the interview process itself. Did you ask the right questions? Are you prepared to be able to identify when you have a great candidate and when you don't? Like, it really sometimes feels like this is throwing darts up against the door. But with Eric Bieniemy, everybody knows exactly why he's not a head coach. He doesn't interview well. He's been there 16 times. He argues with the players too much. Shady McCoy says he doesn't know the passing game. So that's a reason. Like, everyone is so sure about why he's not a coach, but we can't quite seem to put our finger on why some of these other guys fail. That's such a double standard. It fires me up. It's such a double standard. And that's why I think it was reckless for him to do that and say some of the things he said. Even if you felt that way, I just don't think that was especially in this time when we're fighting this kind of thing.
Yep.
Do you know there are people who on social media right now take his comments that he made and they are sprinting like Usain Bolt with them.
Oh, they're holding it up.
I mean, they're just like, see, I told you. That's one of your own who are saying it.
Mm-hmm.
So don't look at us. He said it too. It's like, damn, are you kidding? So like, you
have a little more awareness.
You better be careful when you're speaking on this subject, and you better have your You better think through this very carefully when you speak about this subject, and when you start speaking about people. It's. I'm just gonna leave it there because look, man, I love Shady. I swear, I was in Philly with him. And I take the brotherhood of Pitt football players seriously. Y'all know that. I mean, I'm hailed to Pitt all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I was disappointed in that one. I was disappointed.
Lewis, incredible stuff. Incredible 15 minutes there. We appreciate it.
Now, this is fun. It's great. It's great being around people again, man.
I know.
This remote stuff. Oh. Yeah, it's been good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Look, there's been a call for Coach Bieniemy to get a real shot at a head coaching job. Mike Garafolo, you've covered that all several years now. But according to him, Emrod, that part of it, being a head coach, not priority number one. Your reaction to what he said?
Yeah, Eric Bieniemy lying to us in that regard, right? He wants to be a head coach. Let's just not beat around the bush. The reason why he had to get away from Andy Reid is because everybody knows Andy Reid was the play caller and the play designer and all of those things. So he kind of had to get away from Andy Reid so he can do his own thing and lead his own offense. And I'm wishing Eric Bieniemy all the success in the entire world, because I think a little bit of realization is going to start to happen as OTAs and as he goes to camp and as he sees this Washington Commanders roster. Yes, they're great at the line of scrimmage. Yes, they have some pieces on the outside to throw the football to. Scary Terry and all of those guys. You see that guy right there he's talking to, Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah.
That's arguably the best quarterback of all time. Arguably. All right? One of the best arm talents, arguably, of all time. And that's the guy that he was around over the last few years. And when Eric Bieniemy was with that guy, that team scored over 30 points per game since 2018. I couldn't believe that was a real stat. I think Eric Bieniemy is going to realize that he didn't have the same quarterback there in Washington. He has Sam Howell right now. He's scheduled to be the starter. I'm sure they may bring somebody else in to kind of help that situation. But at the end of the day, you got to realize when you have a guy like Patrick Mahomes calling plays, and being a play caller is a little easier than it is when you have to actually design and actually have, some things with some guys on your roster that the play calling has to help out. You know what I'm saying? And I just hope he's learned some things from Andy Reid with regard to adjusting during games, because, again, Andy Reid had some growth to get to his Super Bowl, right? What I mean is he went to the NFC Championship plenty of times with Philly, got to the Super Bowl with Philly, but he didn't get over the hump until he adjusted. And to me, he adjusted by running the football and being physical in the last couple of Super Bowls. That's how he got his Super Bowl. I believe Eric Bieniemy, if he's picked up those traits, he'll be successful.
Well, I'll say this. Every offensive coordinator in the league under Andy Reid has always been a question mark. Andy Reid has always been and is the designer, the play caller. He's always been that. Marty Morningwig, Doug Peterson, Frank Wright, Matt Nagy, now Eric Bieniemy, and so on and so forth.
And so by me saying all that is Andy Reid has always orchestrated that offense, no matter what, no matter where he's been. So the question that Eric Bieniemy has, he's never done it. Doug Peterson didn't do it. Matt Nagy didn't do it. Marty Morningwig didn't do it. So they had to prove, and I get proving, but let's stop dragging Eric Bieniemy through the mud as if he, all of a sudden, out of all the years and all of the offensive coordinators that have been under Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy is the only one that has to show that he's calling the plays for the first time. He's no different than any other offensive coordinator, which you will learn on the job. And I love what Eric Bieniemy said, and I believe this too, is you don't fear slow growth. You fear standing still. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Too many guys are standing still, and we want to push aside the people with slow growth. Eric Bieniemy deserves the opportunity. And I also believe the way the Washington Commanders are structured and how Ron Rivera is sitting with that organization.
That was my question going to be to you. Like, if this, let's say this offense is prolific.
Yes.
I mean, they go out there, they're the top 5 offense in the National Football League. You look at this offense under Ron Rivera, they're only scoring 20 points a game, right? Mm-hmm. Eric Bieniemy, if he helps this thing be prolific.
Which I believe he can with a good quarterback. But I don't know if Sam.
Me neither. I think the jury's still out on Sam Howell.
I believe the jury is still out on Sam Howell, and they threw Sam Howell out there saying he's our quarterback because you threw Carson Wentz out there and then had no understanding that throwing Carson Wentz out there forfeited. Soon as you lined up Carson Wentz, you forfeited the opportunity to go to the playoffs. Now you're going to throw Taylor Heineke out there, and you're going to cast him out with the baby with the bathwater, as if you have Patrick Mahomes the second on the bench waiting to come out. It's just.
Do you think if this offense is great, do you think Ron Rivera starts looking over his shoulder like, dude?
I think he has to be looking over his shoulder because in 3 years, he has not improved. He's either been stagnant, staying still, but we have not seen any slow growth.
You mentioned the point total for Washington, 27th in the NFL.
Oh my goodness.
So if
how many teams is it?
32.
Yeah. Just making sure. We got to do this quick. Everybody don't do bad now.
In his situation, which you would look at and say, this is the dream job. You've got a great quarterback. You've got an explosive offense. You've won 2 Super Bowls. You're in a position to keep winning for a long time. Would have to move from the team he's with to go to another team that has an unsettled quarterback situation, a tentative coaching situation, in order to try to create opportunities for himself. The level of frustration that he must feel to leave what should be a wonderful scenario and go to such an uncertain place, it's got to be hard, really hard for him.
So, listen, this show, I think, behind Inside the NBA, maybe for most smiles per minute, we try to have fun, we try to laugh a lot. We literally employ a guy who goes by the clown, on YouTube, and Kevin Wildes. He's the funniest man in sports television. This is not one of those topics. And I understand there are some people in the audience that are far, far more bothered by accusations of race playing a factor in things than they are by actual racism. And that's pretty bothersome. But let me just give you the facts here. You can't get the job because Andy Reid, and everybody knows Andy Reid calls the plays. Well, that didn't hurt Matt Nagy. Right. That didn't hurt Doug Peterson. That didn't hurt Andy's last offensive coordinator in Philly. So what do offensive coordinators of Super Bowl teams do? Well, the Chiefs have been a contender for 5 years, so let's use that sample. 2018 Super Bowl, Patriots, Rams. Well, Zach Taylor went from that job to a head coaching job, and Josh McDaniel now has a coaching job. What about Kansas City, San Francisco? Well, that was Eric Bieniemy, and Mike McDaniel was the lead guy in San Francisco. He now has a head coaching job. Now, to be fair, Mike McDaniel's biracial. But I'm not sure people knew that until after he got the job, and he certainly, I don't think, dealt with the assumed, if we're being honest here, a lot of the problem is a lot of the white decision makers don't think the black guy interviewing for the job is quite smart enough to get the job. I don't know if Mike had to deal with that. Next Super Bowl is Kansas City, Tampa. Neither one of those guys, offensive coordinators, have had coaching jobs. They are Eric Bieniemy and Byron Leftwich. Eric just had to leave his job. Byron just got fired from his. The next one is Cincinnati and the Rams. Now, Callahan hasn't gotten a job yet, but it looked like he was very close this offseason. Kevin O'Connell, of course, does have a job. And then the Super Bowl again. We have Eric Bieniemy and Shane Steichen. Eric Bieniemy now has had to leave to go get a chance, and Shane Steichen, of course, has a job. And it's god-dog embarrassing, bro. And the very simple answer is a lot of even well-intentioned white people deep down somewhere, whether recognized or not, don't think the black guy is quite sharp enough. You can coach my running backs. You can fire up my defense. You can do a lot of things. But offensive coordinator is kind of a thinking man's job, and we don't think Eric can do it. And it's amazing to me that it was, he was a terrible interview. He kicked ass in that interview for the OC job, evidently, though. Got that immediately. So, listen, I consider Eric a friend, and this sucks, and so I'm a little biased here, but this is mortifying for the league. That all the offensive masterminds that go to the Super Bowl for 5 years get jobs, except for him who's been there 3 times and left which. It's mortifying.
Well, you just spelled it out. It's racism. There's nothing else to call it. All right? And here's the thing, and I've been saying this, on our radio show to African Americans. This last Super Bowl, we had 2 black quarterbacks starting for the first time ever. How many years, most of the overwhelming majority of the NFL's existence, blacks were told you're not smart enough to play quarterback. You can't play quarterback. So now we're being told you really can't coach. There's 4 black head coaches out of 32, including Mike McDaniel. And so I've been saying, look, whatever we're told we can't do, don't let that hinder you, because Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes are just one of many proofs that we can do it. But I'm going to say this, Nick, because a lot of people will equate it, coach, to the field. Well, which is roughly 70% African American in the NFL. This is the difference. On a playing field or on the court or in a ring, boxing ring, on a track, it's objective, even though quarterback wasn't for a long time. But for the most part, it's objective. You put 2 guys on the field, and it's obvious who's better. And if you want to win, which your job is based on, you can't worry about the color. Black, white, green, yellow, red, whatever. I'm going with this guy because he's better. In corporate America and in corporate football, hiring in the front office, hiring head coaches, it's subjective. There's more people that can do it, and, coach, it's not obvious who's better, who's going to be better, who's more qualified. It's completely subjective, and that's where African Americans get stiffed. And that's why the resume, I know it's never been like you have to meet all these qualifications, but the resume is important because, they just hired Jeff Saturday last season, who was a broadcaster. Okay, so they keep, like you said, moving the goalposts. That's why the resume is important, because if it's not like some set criteria, then African Americans are going to keep getting the short end of the stick.
Well, the other fact is the decision makers don't exactly know what they're doing. So Eric Bieniemy interviewed 16 times for 15 teams. He interviewed with the Jets twice. And this is what Roger Sherman wrote. Only 3 of the 16 coaches picked over Bieniemy since 2019 have made the playoffs, while 7 have been fired already. So you pass on Eric Bieniemy for somebody else, and then you end up firing that person. So I guess the question, we can kind of button it up here. There have been several lateral moves. Dusty looked it up. LaFleur was Rams OC to Titans OC to Packers head coach. Gase, which I don't think, not a great coach. Broncos OC to Bears OC to Dolphins head coach. Bruce Arians, Steelers OC, Colts OC to Cardinals head coach. Do you think this lateral move is actually going to work?
No, I hope it does,
or
but no.
A head coach
but I know that on this during this Chiefs run, Mike Kafka is now a hot head coaching candidate. He reported to Bieniemy, then got hired out to be, I think it's with the Giants as the offensive coordinator, and now he's getting head coaching interviews. And when the Chiefs kick ass next year, you know what a hot name's going to be? Matt Nagy. You know what I mean? He failed in Chicago, got that experience, and it's just, the last thing I'll say is this. I do not think the majority of these, even necessarily any of them, are like, I'm not hiring him, he's a black guy. I don't think it's intentional knowing racism. I think it is ingrained, subconscious thoughts of, gosh, it's a lot of game planning, a lot of real hard analytics stuff. Something tells me he can't do it. And he gets passed over again and again and again. And it sucks, man.
We'll leave that there.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.
Let's start over in the NFL this morning because, according to reports, Eric Bieniemy scheduled to interview today with the Commanders for their offensive coordinator position, not head coach. According to the report, Bieniemy would consider the lateral move with the assumption he would be running the entire offense, and it could be a springboard for him to land an eventual head coaching job. Shannon, what do you think? Should Bieniemy take this OC spot if he gets offered?
No. Why? And do what? Skip, you don't even know who the quarterback's going to be. It was Carson Wentz for like 3 weeks. Then it was Taylor Heineke for a couple of weeks. And the end of the season being Sam Howell. Also, what's going on with Washington? First of all, there's turmoil. It's been brought for the last decade. Now, there's a great, there's an 80, 90% chance, Skip, they're going to be sold. The Commanders are going to be sold. New ownership comes in. What normally happens with new ownership, Skip? Unless you winning up out the yin yang, they clean house. They let the hair go with the hide. So normally, general manager, head coach, coordinator, whoever that is up out of there. So why would you take a Skip, if you can't get a job and you're the OC, even if it's a name only, with Patrick Mahomes, how the hell you think you're going to get a job? You can't get a job and you got Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. You think you about to get a job with Sam Howell? With Carson Wentz? With Taylor Heineke?
Well, obviously, they will hit the free agent market hard. They will try to come away with the biggest name. I don't know who it is. It's Jimmy G. It's Ryan Tannehill. It's name somebody.
How about
it's Derek Carr.
I just want to know why come hot black candidates can't get coaching jobs when they're hot. Okay, let's go back to 2016, Skip.
Yep.
The Patriots won the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Josh McDaniels get offered a job at the 18th hour. He's like, no, I'm good. I'm staying. Sends the fax, I'm staying in New England.
Yep.
In 2017, Frank Reich, OC, gets it. He the one calling plays. Who was calling the plays, Skip? If I'm not mistaken, WP was calling plays, right?
Yeah.
But Frank Reich gets the coach job. 2018, Rams lose the Super Bowl. He's not calling plays. Zach Taylor gets the job in Cincinnati. In 2019, Chiefs win the Super Bowl. Eric Bieniemy doesn't get anything.
Yeah.
2020, Byron Leftwich wins the Super Bowl. Doesn't get anything. He turns that down to the hey, let's put that out there, Skip. He did turn a job down. 2021, Rams win the Super Bowl. Kevin O'Connell does not call plays. Gets the head job at Minnesota. In 2022, Eric Bieniemy does not get hired. Shane Steichen does get hired.
He did.
You see the recurring theme right there, Skip Bayless? I am not touching. I don't want to anywhere near Washington until they settle their situation with what's going on with ownership and all the things that's brewing from the above the coach up. I don't want that. I'm not touching it. So if I'm Eric Bieniemy, I'm gonna stay my butt in Kansas City, because if I can't get a job coaching Patrick Mahomes, I damn sure not going to get a job coaching Sam Howell, Carson Wentz, or Taylor Heineke. Taylor Heineke, I got it right all time, Skip. I'm going to leave that alone, Skip. I'm not fooling with it. Eric Bieniemy, stay where you are. This is a lateral move, but this is a suicide mission. If they don't think you're good enough right now, because you know what they're going to do, Skip, I can't believe the offense for Washington is no better than what they are. Did you see the quarterback that they got?
Yeah.
No. EB, stay you where you are.
Okay. So we have a couple of stories in our overnight packet here on Undisputed. One from Time Magazine, the other from Nancy Armour of USA Today, about this theme of why can't hot black assistants get head coaching jobs when they are hot, when they should be right on schedule to get a job.
What do we talk about on Monday, Skip?
Okay.
The hot black candidates can't get no jobs.
Well, my problem with these stories is you can just check the tape. I have been saying the exact same thing the Time Magazine article is saying and the Nancy Armour article is saying for 15 years on national TV, because I have been dumbfounded by it. It has been inexplicable to me, but then in the end, it's really pretty explicable, because I'm sorry, I'm going to just boil it down to these older white owners just aren't that comfortable with a black head coach because they need to interact. They need to go to dinner with the wives or the significants or whatever, and they're just not that comfortable. Right. When they do have an interview, it's going to be a quicker click with a young white hot candidate. Than it's just culture. It's just the way life is, and I don't know how to defeat it because each of these guys is an independent owner in the umbrella of the NFL, and it's hard to legislate. You must hire a black coach,
legislate
right?
That. No,
you can't unless it's in the man's heart to do the right thing. And every once in a while, we have the Rooneys in Pittsburgh who actually did the right thing. There's this young candidate out of Minnesota, and he's not even the coordinator at that point.
Yeah,
was he the coordinator? I think he'd only been.
He was the DB coach at Tampa. Yeah. The coordinator job in Minnesota after 1 year.
Okay, but it was only 1 year.
Yes.
And he was a nobody to me. I didn't know who he was.
Right.
I did know of his name on Tony Dungy's staff.
Yeah. Great.
But the Rooneys had him in, and they went out to dinner with the wives, and it clicked.
Yes.
And he said, I'm going to take a plunge on this guy, and I'd say that's one of the all-time great plunges, right?
Absolutely.
Every once in a while, it happens. But it's just getting worse and worse. We just had another hiring cycle, and we got one black head coach out of it, out of the 5 that have been hired. It's not right. The league is, what are we going to call it, 70%?
Easy.
Is it more, maybe? It feels more.
It's at least 70%.
Okay, at least 70%. Let's just call it black. 70% black.
Right.
What is going on here? 2 + 2 = oblivion. It's like, what's the problem?
Right.
And then I read these quotes from Jerry Jones, originally in the Washington Post, and he's saying, it's not the interview process, it's who you know. He made the point, I didn't hire Jimmy Johnson off an interview. He didn't need an interview. He played with him. He roomed with him at Arkansas as a teammate, right?
We talk about that.
Okay.
80% of the jobs are filled without an interview.
Okay.
Hey, Skip, you know somebody?
That's what it is. That's what it is. And then Jerry turned right around and fired Jimmy and hired Barry Switzer out of the blue.
He also knew.
Okay. Well, did he know him? Because Barry helped coach that team and had played at Arkansas. So they were like this. They were very close.
Right.
And then he said he almost hired Denny Green, but Parcells became available. So if that's true, I got no problem because Bill Parcells is one of the all-time greats. And if he, in fact, did become available as you were about to hire Denny Green, I get that. But the reason Jerry said he wanted to hire Denny Green is they had served together on the competition committee and they had gotten to know each other. They had socialized.
Right.
So,
but think about that, Skip. He said he hired Jimmy Johnson because he knew him. He hired Barry because he knew him.
Yep.
Now he get an opportunity to hire Denny Green, who he served with. He went with a guy he didn't know.
He didn't know.
That was White. You see what he did?
But everybody knew that White coach because he, at that point, was revered as the greatest coach, right?
But here's the thing. What I deduced from what he said, yes, you White, I know you, I'm going to get you.
Yeah.
If you White and I don't know you and there's a black guy that I do know, I'm still going to get you. Because he had the opportunity. Skip, you know how close lock, stop, and barrel you got to walk with a guy on the competition committee?
Yep.
Y'all in everything, room, the face mask, the illegal contact, the this, the that.
And you're having dinners together.
Yeah, you in the room with that man all the time on the meetings.
Okay. And Jerry's saying, God, I kind of like this black man. Okay. Because Jerry didn't grow up around a lot of black people.
None.